Africans at home and throughout the diaspora. Unity is strength. We got the power. Stop the fussing and the fighting. Now's the time to do the right thing. We need more UNITY. Come. Stop the fussing and the fighting. Yeah. Now's the time to do the right thing. In the spirit of Umoja, embrace with love. Let's do it right now.
Good afternoon. Yes, we are going. We connect not only the battles going on in the battlefield, we also connect the soldiers and the issues that people are fighting for, so that we see how connected this is, so that we see that there's a common enemy, so that we see their solidarity. And so this is the place that we're going to talk about that. Today, based on some goofiness on my part, I'm going to be your host and your guest. So it is an open mic, and there's plenty to talk about. But we'll also talk about what's coming up in the future. But yeah, so one of the things I always remind you of is that we have a 34 count felon in the White House. He is a guardian of pedophiles. He is a war criminal. You know, at first I used to say warmonger, but now he's a war criminal. And so we got to understand who's in the White House, who's at the helm of this, who is using our tax dollars to their benefit and to wreck the rest of the world. And so I'm just going to put that in focus for us, because we need to be reminded of that. You know, one of the things I thought was interesting is that we still have genocide going on in Gaza. The Palestinian people are still struggling, fighting for their liberation. That's completely off mainstream media. And so we have to continue to remind ourselves that there's struggle. The other war that's going on is the struggle of the Ukrainian for their own sovereignty. And what's so interesting about that is initially the U.S. appeared to be an ally. And I know some of us said, yes, we should support the Ukraine. They're a sovereign nation. Yes, we should send some aid. We should have understood that Trump bows down to Putin, and Putin wants some of Ukraine. So all of a sudden, his issues are at the forefront for negotiation and not the sovereignty of the Ukrainian people. So that war is dragging on much longer than it should have, had we had some very concise people negotiating that meeting, our stupid president. So that's still going on, and there's still, death and destruction. One of the interesting things, though, was that during the Oscars, Sean Penn got Best Actor, and he was not there to receive his Academy Award, but they didn't say much. They said he's not here, and then I think the person who was introducing said, and he doesn't want to be here. And I thought that was strange. So, of course, I'm a curious person, so I started doing the research. Sean Penn was in the Ukraine meeting with Zelensky, the president, because he supports that struggle, and his thing was what he can do, and probably what can he get this country to do, his stupid president to do. So that was an interesting twist on the Oscars, because he wasn't there, and he now is in an elite category, because he's one of the few actors that has won that coveted role 3 times. He's been nominated many times, but he's actually won the Oscar 3 times for Best Actor, and he's a fairly intense actor. And so yeah, so that's where Sean Penn was. He was taking on an ambassador role in Ukraine, seeing how he can, I guess, personally support the Ukrainian fight for sovereignty. So it just seems like there's wars going on all around, and we're going to get to that in a minute. I do want to say that over the last few years, the Academy ratings has gone down, along with the audience numbers have gone down. And I know I've been in that number because, I'm not going to be watching, the pageantry of white people, affirm each other to the expense of women and people of color. So I had not been watching it. But this year, because Sinners was up as the most nominated, listen to this, the most nominated movie in history. I think they had 16 nominations. So I was going to watch to see how all this was going to unfold. And unfold it did. Now, there was, they did get uh, best cinematography. Did I say that right? Cinematography, and it got best music score. And of course, Michael B. Jordan got best actor. Now, these are all the things that a director needs to make a masterpiece. Yet, no best director for Sinners. So, Oscar So White reigns again. I think one battle after another, which also had an interesting cast, including Tiana Taylor, won a bunch of awards. In fact, I think they won more than Sinners. But yeah, so probably next year I will not be watching the Academy Awards. Y'all did Sinners wrong. Yeah. Oscar so white. Hashtag Oscar so white. I do want to remind you that this is Women's History Month, and like Black History Month, this is just a month to concentrate on the celebration, the accomplishments, the achievements, the struggles, but it's not going to be about 1 month. Now, again, I have to go back to what our country is doing in our name. This is the first time in the United Nations history that they broke ranks and started and began to look at reaffirmation of women's rights. Now, as somebody who participated in all the international conferences during the decade for women, and that was during the 90s, this was an interesting piece because every time I went, which was every 5 years, it was in another country around the world, the UN never showed up for women. I'll just have to say it like that. So luckily I was in the non-governmental agencies and organizations who advocated for women, particularly women of color, and particularly women of African descent. And so for the first time in 70 years, the United Nations broke from consensus from the global reaffirmations, because there's a process that you go through. 37 nations were in favor of this reaffirmation of women's rights, and there was one against. Do I have to tell you who was the one against? United States. And one of the reasons that they gave for opposing it was because it included, language such as diversity, equity, inclusion. It talked about regulating AI. It talked about a definition for gender. These folks got lots of issues with gender definition. And it also talks about the reproductive health rights of women and girls. And we see in full display that they have no, this administration and probably previous administrations have had little regard for the reproductive health of women and girls. That's why we can't seem to, keep the abortion rights in place. Roe v. Wade was overturned after 50-something years. And now we see how ICE is using this, because these women and girls in custody are being, as they're being detained, some of them are being raped and some of them are even becoming pregnant. So, teenagers. And so we already know that, this is this is a government that's not going to protect women. But I thought that that was pretty historic that the rest of the civilized countries, the developed countries, said, yes, we want to do that. And even though it's not part of the official UN process, because they have all these conventions that they use to ratify uh, some of these decisions. And this was almost like a resolution, but it was a reaffirmation that women are important, women's rights are important, women's rights need to be respected and protected. So Women's History Month, we celebrate the United Nations affirmation of us, our bodies, our lives, and our contributions. So yeah, that's something to move forward. That was good news. That was good news. Um, I want to talk a little bit about the cancellation of the 46th anniversary celebration of the Organization for Black Struggle. We got that word over the weekend. It sent us into a tailspin because this has been in the works for months. And if you remember, our anniversary is in January. So it was going to be January 31st, and that was the day that we had the big snowstorm. So we had to make a decision like several days before then to say, in the abundance of caution, and our supporters, we are going to cancel. And so even though it was hybrid in that there was going to be some virtual participation, we felt like we did not want people doing that. And some people were already saying, I won't be there. So we made that decision. And so the new date was March 21st, which would have been uh, coming up. So we had partnered, and this anniversary celebration was different from every other one. And I think I've talked about this on my show, and that is one is we started to look at the economic impact that the food in the White House was wreaking upon us, and that we knew that the cost of a ticket need to be like very affordable for our folks, our working class folks who wanted to come. And we've never like told people you can't come. If you show up at the door, you go get in, because it's not just all. It's the biggest fundraiser for the organization, and it's youth component, the Youth Council for Positive Development. But that's not the main thing. It's an important aspect, and so we had. The March 21st, we looked at that and we said, okay, we're going to switch up on the program. We're not going to have a dinner program because that's what was increasing the cost. And we saw how food prices were going up, which means the catering prices were going to go up. And so we eliminated that to have light refreshments, and so that brought the cost down. We also this year, for the first time ever, we're partnering with a department at the University of Missouri at St. Louis, because we have been working with the museum department around our Black Legacy Archive project. And so they were going to partner in. Again, a partner means you come together, and there's some sharing of responsibilities, and one of those was they would secure the venue. And so we were going to be at the Century Room at the Millennium Center. And so that was between the department and the rental event department. So OBS really had nothing to do with that. We took on the expense for food. And so that was the way that we kind of balanced out like that responsibility. Well, apparently, according to the university, something was wrong with the contract. Now, we didn't buy that because with a contract, particularly if it's an internal thing, what we said would be done, and most people that we talked to about like the why said, well, wait a minute, why didn't they just like resolve the issue and move on? So it's almost like, for example, if there's a contract and somebody forgot to sign, okay, that makes it null and void. So you go back and say, Jamala, you forgot to sign, or John Doe, you forgot to sign. If you need to do that in order for this to be valid, no problem. Sign it, send it back. That did not happen. And instead, it was completely canceled with no attempt to resolve it. In fact, it wasn't until after we found out that we reached out to the chancellor and said, "Wait, hold up, wait a minute, you all are completely messing us up on this one. This has been in the work in the works for a while. We've got a long history with the University of Missouri. This seems like something else." And so we concluded, like, what's different about this time? And what we concluded, as did our supporters, as did people inside of the university system, is what's different now is Police Chief Tracy is now there doing his secondary employment. What's different is OBS is one of the leading partners around police accountability, and particularly in opposition to the takeover of local control of the police department. So these issues really, we think, provided the perfect storm for the cancellation, because it can't be about an internal contract with two departments inside of the university. And so, yes, we were upset. Yes, we were mad. Yes, we were like just outdone, just because of the reasons that were given. Because then it sort of makes you think like we some damn fools, and we can't see through what's going on. So keep in mind the University of Missouri is a state university, and these universities have been under pressure from the MAGA people to make sure that they toe the line. They're not talking about, diversity, race, inclusion, any of that, for fear of losing funding. And I get that. And that's really, I think we ought to recognize that as a sad situation for our institutions of higher learning to be faced with. So, I think about, we've had a relationship, the Organization for Black Struggle, since our beginning. I mean, we've worked with the student group there over the years. I've been there to speak, as well as other members of the organization, to classes. There's been internships, interns and volunteers that came to OBS and the Youth Council to do volunteer work. Um, I worked at one point real closely with the sociology department, social work department, and in fact was the commencement speaker one year. So it's been a positive relationship. And the fact that, our archives are at the Missouri State Historical Society, which is separate but is housed inside of the university. It's on the campus. That's a relationship that we started about 5 years ago. So we were a little bit, outdone by all of this, as you can imagine. And then it sent us scurrying to try to find a venue. And basically we said if we couldn't find a venue in 24 hours, we would have to cancel the anniversary celebration. And we didn't, because, okay, like a week before the anniversary, that's not how you reserve a venue. So most of the venues that we would have normally like looked at, that doesn't have a whole lot of bureaucracy, they were pretty much taken. And so we had to send out, first of all, we sent out a press release that said, here's what's happening and why. Here's our view about why. Um, and I have to say, we got so much response and support from people, and we really, really appreciate that. Like, what can I do to help? This is outrageous. You know, Cheryl Smith Walker started a fundraiser on her Facebook page, because again, this is the big fundraiser for both groups, for the Organization for Black Struggle and our youth organization. Um, and so, but I think what we realize, and we put it in perspective, which is why I can appear to be calm right now, is when we look around. For example, there are still neighbors whose homes are still damaged by the tornado, tarp flapping off the roofs, um, people suffering because of the food prices, people are unhoused. So in the scheme of things, this is not the end of the world for us. And at 46 years old, we're going to be celebrating anyway. That's not going to stop us from celebrating. And so we didn't really want to get hung up with, this is so damn special that everything has to stop and it's about us. And we've actually conveyed that to our partners and our friends who say, what can we do? Because there's things that are already in motion that are important, and we don't want to be a distraction from that. In fact, we want to continue to add to that motion. And so it is what it is, but we are not going down without a fight. We've made our position known to Chancellor there and some of the other folks there that, this is unacceptable, and that particularly based on their touting that they are so community minded and uh, prone to initiatives. And I think generally they probably could say that probably more so than some of the other universities in the city, and that's because they are state. And until Harris Stowe State College became a historic black college, that made two. And so yeah, so again, I'm cognizant of the pressure that universities are under, colleges are under based on MAGA. Uh, but I think the way that I look at it, and I've written about this, is you embed yourself in the community that you serve. And most of these universities, even across the country, are on or inside of a community. They're not like in some rolling, place outside of a city or town. And most of the time, they play a significant role in that town or city's economy, their social life, their cultural life. So they are important to the fabric of our society. And so it's even more reason for them to be accountable. I think personally that we could have worked it out behind the scenes without a whole bunch of hoopla. But when you don't want to do that, then you leave us um, no choice but to tell our friends it's canceled. We can give you your money back if you so choose, but it's not going to happen at the university campus. And so there you have it. So again, thank you for all your support. Thank you for stepping up and saying, what can I do? Some of you all are already uh, emailing and calling the chancellor there, Sobolik, and particularly for those who are alumni, you all said, no, this is unacceptable. This is a university that I went to, and those were not the ideals that they espoused when I was there. So we appreciate anything you do. Some people are taking um, the social media graphic and sharing it and also tagging the chancellor. That's fine. I think any way that you show your opposition and your displeasure, your outrage, your anger is probably healthy and acceptable. So again, thank you for that. And I just want to say also for me personally, um, if you called me, text me, or emailed me and you didn't get a response, it's been crazy for this last week. And so give me some grace. And as this thing starts to subside and we look at what's going to be some of the alternatives, I think I can get back in the saddle. But it's been, like I said, been crazy because you all call and say, what's up, Jamala? What's going on? What can I do? And so I've had to answer some of that. Um, so, I think, also I think it points to where not just St. Louis is, but where the state is and where the country is. And that is, you got this whole right wing piece, right wing wind going across the country. And, and it took some of us a while to figure out what to do because we knew it was not going to be good. First of all, they told us in Project 2025 what they were going to do, and they've been following that playbook, you know, almost page by page. So it wasn't like we didn't know, y'all. And so one of the things I've been looking at real close, and I'm going to have some discussion with you all about this. But when there's a problem, and most of the time I say this when there's an interpersonal problem, like because I'm a trained mediator, and so it's like, what part of the problem does each of the parties own? Like, what did you do or not do that contributed to this issue? And so I think the same thing applies to where we are in this country. Citizens, what role did we play? What did we do or didn't do that allowed the ascendancy of a dictator into the White House? Not just one time, but two times. Not just one time, but two times. So the first time you can say, oh, that was a fluke. The second time, we got to hold ourselves accountable on some levels, and we need to figure out what that is. And so I think when I start to look at um, where this country is, I know people have been in the streets. They've been petitioning the courts. They've been at these legislative hearings and sessions. Last week, you all showed up for the public safety hearing about the police budget. So yes, all of that is important, but we got to up the ante, y'all. We got to up the ante, and the midterms are not a silver bullet that things are going to be okay. Because what's we hearing now from the food in the White House is that there may not be midterm elections because there might be some terrible war going on where the U.S. is threatened, and there's going to have to be some kind of emergency situation that the president calls to halt everything that's normal. So we got to get ready for that, y'all. We absolutely got to get ready for that. I think I reported, it's been so much going on, I can't remember. I think last week I talked about the fact that Denise Lieberman and her team from Missouri Voter Protection was arguing in front of the Missouri Supreme Court about, our voting rights, which, the MAGA folks are trying to take that away, make it difficult to vote, and all of that I think is heading towards no elections in November. So when we saw them take voter files in Georgia, why are you doing that? That was for election that's over. But what they get to do, we don't even know. They haven't said why they're taking them. They haven't said what they're going to do with them. I would be very fearful if I was the Secretary of State in Georgia about what they're going to get back, if they even get them back. So you got a government, a rogue government that's out of control, and now they're going to states that they have a Republican Secretary of State, and they're going to get those voter files. Um, we have a Republican Secretary of State here. They haven't said whether or not they would comply if such a request was made of them. But yeah, these are times that are very different. And so I think we have to begin thinking differently. I think we have to begin to say anything is going to go. And so we have to be prepared with various scenarios. Um, and in Missouri, you know, we've had some issues with voter uh, suppression, the whole voter ID thing. We beat back for a while, and so here we are again at the same place. It seems like we've gone in a circle, but that's okay because as we move, we are garnering more support, and we also are educating people in a more holistic way about how all of these things, how all of these issues are connected. And so I believe that they're going to come, they're going to knock on the door of the Missouri State Secretary of State and say, we need your voter files for the election that Trump lost. So, what do we do? Let's start thinking about that. Just like I think that we need to start thinking about, in fact, there was one city, I forgot if that was in Georgia, where they ran out of ballots and they shut the voting booths down. Now, I'm sure there's going to be a lawsuit, but To what end? It'll be over. So yeah, so these are the games they're playing, and again, we need not be naive because A, they're telling us, they're projecting what they're going to do, and B, they're actually doing that. So we should not be surprised, nor should we be caught off guard. And so let's start organizing now. Let's be proactive um, about what's going on. Uh, that I thought about when I said proactive. For at least the last 5, 6 years, I've been asking, and particularly for the labor movement, the organized labor movement, is let's start thinking about the impact that automation is going to have on the workforce. And that was really before AI became a factor. Now AI could be devastating. It could really decimate jobs that we thought we would have for a long time. And so I'm going to give you an example. In Tempe, Arizona, there is a Sam's that has virtually no employees. They don't even have the little person, little senior citizen at the door saying hello, welcome, gone. So all your shopping will be on an app. Even the food court, an app. There's people back there fixing the food, but that's about it. When you get ready to check out, AI is going to check you out. So this is the future, y'all. And I kept saying I don't want to be afraid of AI because technology can be an asset to the development of humanity, to the benefit of humanity. Think about all of the medical advances that we have. Some of them are, out of reach in terms of cost, but it's there, and AI is another example of how we could use that. But you have to expect that under capitalism, under imperialism, that those in power will not use the technology for good. They're going to use the technology to maximize their profits and to kill people. Those are the two things I've seen them do with technology. Um, because what kind of sociopath sits around thinking about how many people they can kill effectively? But that's what they're doing, and we see that even with the war. So we need to start thinking about what do we do with surplus workers when they start like pushing people out, laying them off. Uh, and those are the places that are still going to be in business. The folks who can't afford even to operate will just shut down, and you'll be out of a job. And we should expect to see some of that, more of that in the future, based on the way the economy is going. So I don't want us to be sitting ducks and victims. That's one thing I just, the thought of just being a victim because you don't have any power, or you think you don't have any power, um, and then they utilize you in to their benefit, and it's never good. And again, I keep saying, don't give up your voice, don't give up the vote, and don't let them get in your pocketbook. I've been trying to think of a V word for the pocketbook part because it might be easier to remember if I say, remember the three V's: vote, voice, and so far, I haven't been able to think about that. But so yeah, so that's a sort of a backdrop to looking at the latest thing that Trump and his rogue war criminals have done. And if you've watched them talk about the war in Iran, um, it's almost gleeful. It's really sick. Um, And then some of us were checking out the way that they were uh, targeting these boats that they claim were narco terrorists. We never got the evidence of that. We don't know what it was, but I think now we can surmise that they were having target practice for the big one for Iran. Uh, and so yeah, so this man, first of all, when I tell you he's a pathological liar, we got plenty of evidence. So they claimed that they had bombed Iran's, arsenal base, whatever, back in whatever. So now we now fast forwarded, and now they're saying they're targeting it now. Well, I thought you targeted, several months ago. So they're just liars, and you can't believe a damn thing they say. Uh, but here, one of the first targets was a children's school. What kind of sick person would target a school with children in it? So that's what I'm saying. This whole notion of what do you use technology for? These are supposed to be smarter weapons, more sophisticated, meaning that the amount of collateral damage is going to be lessened because they can just zero right in on that, like crosshairs, when they show you all the bombings that they do, and you get it right in that middle, and then you can be sure that you got the right target. Well, does that mean that you deliberately target the girls' school? And first they lied about it. They said, "Oh, we didn't do that." No, no, no. And then come to find out, it was U.S. Missiles that did that. So, 100 and something kids, girls, staff, gone, gone. And so every time things like this happen, the odometer for anti-American hate goes up. That's why we have to show people we don't support none of what these people in the White House are doing. Um, PP has said, keeps saying, like, we got this. This is going to be over soon. And here we are in the third week. And I know you all hear me talk about strategy all the time. So you just obsessed with strategy? Yes, I am, because strategy is going to show you the way to a successful outcome. If you don't have one, any tactic is going to take you there. So when you think about Iran, and Trump wanted to, heap some pain on them. When you develop a strategy, you are looking at all of the factors that are going to help you determine what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. And so you're looking at your allies. Who's going to do this with you? You're looking at what are some of the obstacles on the ground. Are you going to be looking at what is your capacity to sustain something if you don't get it done in a couple of days, as he claimed he was going to do? So none of that seems to have been taken into consideration. So first of all, I don't know what allies you have going in this war. You didn't tell them about it. Trump didn't even tell the people in the Middle East that he was getting ready to do that. They were caught off guard. So guess what? When Iran started bombing U.S. targets in those people's countries, now you got 8 other countries that are involved in this. It's really the biggest conflict that we've seen in a while. It's a regional conflict where they got involved and they didn't necessarily want to be involved. So Trump is sending, big time war weapons over there, missiles and all of that. He did not come to Congress. Surprise, surprise. Did not make the case for war, even for the American people. And I just want to stop right now with that. I don't want you to make a case for war. There's nothing that you can say that lets me believe that that's going to be a legitimate war. So I'm not asking for him to make the case because he's going to lie. We've had lies before about why we went into countries. Remember the whole weapons of mass destruction thing, and there was none? These folks will lie to get into these people's countries to steal their resources, particularly the oil. So I don't need Trump and his bandits to say why they went into Iraq. I don't want him to. Just get the hell out of there, which they don't even have an exit strategy. So the other part of having a strategy going in is like you look at who your allies are. And of course, there's been some tried and true allies over the centuries. You didn't even tell them. And in fact, before this, you hit them with big fat tariffs to wreck their economy. Now this war in Iraq is going on longer than you thought, and you ain't winning. So now you're reaching out to your allies. You're reaching out to Spain, to Britain, to Canada, to Germany, and they're looking at you like, what? You smacked us with tariffs, some of them the highest that we've ever had, and you know, no, no, we can't do this. We can't do this. And so yeah, they're saying no, this is not our war. This is not our war. And yeah, and so here we are. Here we are fighting a war that we don't belong in. It's costing $1 billion a day, and that's the minimum. 1 billion, you all, and we 2 weeks in. So when they say they don't have money for SNAP, they don't have money for health care, they don't have money for all the human needs, we can see that that's just a bold-faced lie, that the commitment is never going to be there with this particular administration, and they're spending our money like drunken sailors. $1 billion a day. So, I think, we need to be cognizant of that and and act accordingly. One of the things that PP Hefner said was, we're not going to go by stupid rules of engagement. So they aren't, and so they're killing children. They now they want people to allies to come and help them, and nobody's coming. So where did your stupid rules of engagement? Where did it lead you? And then you got uh, Trump just said just the other day that they may just bomb that island for fun. See what I'm saying? This is not about some threat. This is about them exhibiting power that they don't need to do because it's all fake power because they don't have the American people's um, consent, they don't have Congress consent, and they don't even have the support of, historic allies. So we have gotten ourselves in a mess, and I say we because even though we didn't say yes, we got to do something about it. That's our tax dollars. Not, and I've said it a million times. It's like somebody reached into your pocket and they threw some money out. Your lives are going to become more and more desperate because of the money that they're spending. I just saw my brother Trahern come on, and I got my dates mixed up, and so I think I sent you two two Zoom links, probably one for April,
Okay,
and
I'm
then
sorry about that. I was just making sure. I apologize.
no, no, no. I'm glad you're here because then it gives me a chance to talk about what's going to come up next month. So, Brother Trey Horn is part of a group that I'm bringing on next week because you all have, again, one of the things that's not in the news anymore, this is how they play us, is what's going on in Minneapolis. And so, Brother Trey Horn has been there, and there's a couple of other folks that we want to bring on to talk about not just what's going on now, but what they think will happen. And there's been some incredible organizing in Minneapolis. I'm talking about on the ground that I think other cities could learn from. ICE, even though they are trying to reduce the resources they have to that, they still out and about and they still on a rampage to make their numbers, to make their quotas. So, Brother Cruz, can you give us a little bit of a hint about what's going on, and then we could do a full thing when we next month when we come back.
I'm sorry. I was like, oh no, I missed the meeting. Okay, so I'm glad it's next
I
month.
I goofed up. I already apologized to people that my head has been spinning because you missed the first part of it where the university that we were going to have our 46th anniversary, the Organization for Black Struggle, they canceled at the
Okay.
last minute, and so. that took me all kind of different directions. So I was not as focused as I need to be. So I might have given you some wrong information, but
That's
I'm
all right.
glad you're here, and we'll get a chance to see you again next month. So what do you do in because you're in not Minneapolis? Are you in
St. Paul.
St. Paul? And
Yeah.
so we don't hear a whole lot about St. Paul, but I'm going to just explain to people who might be geographically challenged. It's kind of like East St. Louis and St. Louis. You're just
Mhm.
going across the water.
Absolutely.
So, so when something happens in either place, people kind of come together. So talk about what the sentiment is. What's the temperature there now with all the stuff going on and the fact that we can't see it anymore? I mean, really, I haven't seen anything on Minneapolis in a week or so, unless you go searching for it. So what's happening on the ground? How are people doing? How are the lawsuits going around the murders of the two citizens there? Well, more than that, it's been several citizens. Okay, yeah.
We have the ICE is still here. So usually in Minnesota, there's about 70 to 80 ICE agents. Right now, there's about 600 ICE agents, and they're still dropping off new vehicles at the Whipple Center. And the Whipple Center is located at Fort Snelling. And so Fort Snelling is where Dred and Harriet Scott were enslaved uh, by the U.S. Army in the early 1830s.
Wow, wow. Did y'all hear that? That's a connection to us, St. Louis. I didn't
Right.
know that.
Yeah, and so he was in St. Louis, and so because he was in Minnesota when Dred Scott went back to St. Louis, he sued because Missouri had a law that said once free, always free. So I was
Right.
shocked when I found myself in the Whipple, in custody at the Whipple Center if at Fort Snelling, where Dred and Harriet Scott and her children were enslaved
Wow.
in the early
Wow.
1830s. But so they're still dropping off vehicles there. They're still yeah, they're still here. So a while ago, a month or two ago, they had about 3,000 ICE agents here. Now they're down to about 600, but there's that's still way above the average, and so people are still looking out for each other, bringing each other food, watching the daycares, watching the schools, watching the church,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
sure that
Mm-hmm.
children don't get grabbed by ICE or parents aren't being grabbed by ICE and things like that. Uh, the From what I've heard or seen, possibly the Hennepin County attorney may bring charges against the officer who killed Renee Good and also the officers that are responsible for the death of Alex Preddy, who was also killed by ICE agents here in the state of Minnesota.
Yeah.
But we're also but as Black people, we're still dealing with Minnesota has the third biggest racial wealth gap in the United States. So then you throw ICE on top of that for Black Americans, and it just really makes it hard when people are dealing
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
evictions and
Mm.
things like that. But I don't want to say
Yeah.
too much because I want to save a little bit for.
Yeah, no, 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 because it may be different people next time around. Somebody might not be able to get on the call next week. I mean, next month. But I'm wondering about the Whipple facility because what efforts are being made to shut that sucker down because it seems like a hellhole.
It was pretty wild when I was taken into custody there. Uh, they had two. I don't think when I came in, they said, "Is he an agitator or is he a illegal immigrant?" They were like agitator, so they took me to a different part of the jail. But that's what they used to call Martin Luther King. That's what they used to call people in the early '60s. When you look at the language of like George Wallace and others, they would talk about outside agitators. And so they're using that same language today against peaceful protesters and things like that. And
Trayvon, where would you have gone if you were a inside agitator?
well, that's where I was. I'm not from outside. That's the thing. They're making it
No,
seem like.
but I'm saying if they making that distinction, where would you have gone if you said, "No, I live here. I'm from this
Uh,
place."
I think they took me to the same place where the agitators were at, and
Yeah,
then you can
yeah.
see
That's
another
what I
part.
thought.
Exactly. Then you can see like
Wow.
the other part was where they had the so-called immigrants all sleeping in one cell on the floor and stuff too. So
Wow.
it was pretty wild the way
Yeah.
going. I think they've from what some of our new some other so we got they just indicted another 30 people, including our co-founder of BLM Minnesota, Monique Cullors Doty. And what she told me is that the immigrant I don't know if the immigrants are still in there anymore. Like
Mm.
so, we'll see. But we'll you can't. We'll see what happens.
Well, what was Whipple before all of this? Was it something else, or it has always been a detention center?
Not that I'm aware of. So I think that there's other places where they're trying to set up detention centers in Minnesota and across America.
Yeah. Yeah, I've been reporting on the detention centers that communities have shut down or said no, no, no. In Kansas City, they said not at least not for another 5 years, no detention centers. So that exactly, I mean that expands past the current black mayor's term. So he was at least saying not under my watch. And so I think there's been enough citizen opposition to in some places where they were organized that they were able to shut the places down or shut down the building of new facilities. Yeah, so I think that's a powerful piece there because one of the things we've been saying is don't think it's just for the so-called immigrants. When the detention centers are created and some of them can hold up to 10,000 people, who
Mm,
else do you think is going to be in there? It's going to be people
absolutely,
that look like us.
that
Yeah,
part for
yeah,
sure.
yeah, yeah. So how many people can Whipple hold?
Um, I'm not sure the exact number, but it's a pretty big building.
Yeah,
And
that's what
every
I
day,
remember seeing an aerial view, and I'm like, whoa, that's
yeah.
huge.
There was some in the Native Americans have put up a teepee out there because it's actually on native land that is even
Wow.
actually federally recognized by the United States government. So yeah, uh, it's been a very stressful winter to say the least with ice here.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And you all just got some more snow, so
Yeah,
yeah, y'all
yup.
probably won't see sidewalks until what, May?
I don't know, right? It's 40 degrees today, so it's kind of melting a little bit. So
Oh,
we'll see.
okay. But you all are used to that kind of weather. But we had some cold weather and some snow, and everything shut down as if we have never had snow and ice before. So yeah. But one of the things that I took note of is the number of people that organizers were training up to first of
Mhm.
all be to participate in nonviolent demonstrations, but also to be observers. And to me, that's a different level of organization because what you're saying is that it's your responsibility to protect your neighborhood, your community, and we're going to give you the tools to do that. And I think for me, one of the things I've been saying is like we can't be spectators anymore. We can't be sitting like looking like, oh, that's happening to Joe over there. Oh, that's happened to Trahern over there. Oh, that's too bad, so sad. When they're coming our way, they're gonna be
Yeah,
knocking on our door. Yeah. And so the numbers that I heard were just like amazing across the state. And so
I
obviously
think it
with
was
with the
3,000 people, over 3,000 people that they had took into custody, and some are
yeah.
in Whipple, but some there's like I know when you get arrested, they make by the Fed by ICE, they make you sign something to say that Con Air can take you to Texas or something to have you in
Wow,
jail.
you got to sign for that? You got to sign for your own damn incarceration?
Yeah, yeah. So I think some of the people that get arrested, they're not just staying in Minnesota, they're taking them to other places too.
And do family members know where they're being taken?
Sometime I don't know. I know I think they're just some of this stuff is still being litigated in court. So I know when I got to Whipple Building, I wasn't allowed to make a phone call, and so because
See,
it's
y'all,
different than
you
being
talk about constitutional rights, all this stuff gets thrown out the window.
yeah.
Wow.
Not having to have a warrant to come into your house, a whole bunch of these things
Yeah,
have been on the
yeah.
table.
And the reason this is important because, as we said, it's coming to a neighborhood near you. You need to be prepared. You're already seeing what's happening in all the places to happen in Minneapolis. Like who would have thought that that would be like ground zero for the ICE struggle? And so I think particularly as the weather warms up, these
Mm.
people, the MAGA folks, get desperate. They're gonna be whipping people off the streets in other places, not just LA and Minneapolis. You know, they're gonna be coming to smaller cities and smaller towns because the quota is what's driving them. You know, they
Absolutely.
got to fill up these places, and then they getting pressure from these for-profit detention centers or these prison centers to say, "Wait a minute, you promised us X number of people so we can make our money, and y'all falling short." So they gonna have to make up those numbers.
Absolutely. And I know the current administration put billions of dollars into uh, that effort. So
Yeah, yeah, wow. Well, you all, I'm glad that Trahern, we've not met before, so I'm even glad we get a chance to meet. But we all on the battlefields wherever we are, struggling for our people, and so I'm just going to give you a couple of things that's coming up. Hang with me, Trahern. But on Thursday, they're going to have a hearing on the data center. And you know that's a big
mm,
area of contention all over the country. And in St. Louis region, there've been people in the counties, communities that have been like, no, 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 no. So this meeting is going to be 8:30 in the morning, and that lets you all know they're not really interested in in our input. You will have something at 8:30 in the morning on a Thursday, but
mm,
that's for the data center, and they calling that the conditional use because there has to be conditions in which these people get to operate. But we're saying no to all data centers because it's an environmental problem. Uh, a humanitarian problem because most of these data centers are for surveillance, and storing all this data on us. And so
wow.
who wants to be complicit to that madness? And if they have to do it, let them do it on their own dime as opposed to taxpayers paying for it. And don't get caught up with the fact that it's going to be some damn jobs. It's going to be a few jobs and then the rest of y'all, and they're probably going to be menial jobs, not even living wage jobs. So don't get hung up on that. I
Right.
do want to get us ready for next Wednesday when there's going to be a budget hearing on the police stuff.
Mm,
So just like you showed up last week, we got to show up this week, next week on the 25th. That's going to be at City Hall. It's going to be in the Kennedy Room at 6 p.m. See, this is where you know that folks want your input after
yeah.
work. So come on down. Be prepared to. You don't even have to. You could do it. You could also listen on online. Everything is recorded now. But if you want to testify, you got something to say, you got to be down there so you can say it. So that is going to be March 25th. The show next week, we're going to have Annie Rice from Art City Defenders talk about the budget process so that you can better understand the fight, how they are circumventing that fight, and how they're going to use our money to keep us oppressed and contained. So I'm going to try to get as much of this up on my website so that you have that. But I am so glad Brother Cruz joined us. That I saw you coming in. I'm like, wait a minute. Okay, that was my fault, but I'm glad. I'm glad we connected. And I think the show on Minneapolis is going to be. I think it's April 29th, but don't give me the tell and the tale. But it'll be up on the website soon. So if you missed anything. The shows are up on my website, JamalaRogers.com. The video parts on the YouTube channel, and so you don't have to. If you miss something, you can always go back. So I do want to thank my brother for joining us, even though it was a little premature, but that's okay.
Apologies about that, but
No, it's not an apology. No, you helped me to like sort of round out the show, and I appreciate that. But we definitely want you back next month to talk about what's going on in Minneapolis. Yeah,
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
this is my see you on the battlefield.
No procrastination.